Hello everyone. Well, as you know, yesterday Sloppy disappeared. She went off to look at the map and she was trying to find Santa, and she bumped into some elves, and look how she's come back. She's all dressed up as an elf. She's been helping, and she's brought me a story for you today. Unfortunately, it's from the Elves, so it's a bit small. I don't know how she expects me to read this. So I've changed it. I've had it translated into human, and I'm going to read that for you today. It's called The Elves and the Shoemaker. In a little village near a big city lived a shoemaker and his family. The shoemaker worked very hard from dawn until dusk, making good and sturdy shoes for farmers, bakers, carpenters and milkmaids. And still the shoemaker was poor, because those who bought his shoes had very little money to pay for them. An old barefoot washerwoman came into his shop one afternoon and said, "I have these few coins. What kind of shoes can I buy?" Truth be told, the coins weren't even enough to buy one shoe, never mind a pair. But the shoemaker's heart was big, and he showed her his most comfortable pair of shoes. "These will be good for your tired old feet," he said, holding up a pair of sturdy shoes. "And they will be warm for the cold season ahead." "I'll take them," she said, flashing him a grateful, toothless smile. And the bigger the shoemaker's heart grew, the smaller his wallet became, until one day he hadn't a single coin left to buy food for his family. And with a heavy heart, he cut out his very last piece of leather for the last pair of shoes that he would be able to make. And on the bench next to the leather, he placed his shoe hammer and his needle and his thread. "Oh, I'm too tired now," he said to himself. "I'll get a good night's sleep and I'll make the shoes in the morning. Otherwise I won't make a very good job of them. As long as I make them really well, I can sell them and just buy one last meal for my family before we all starve." Sick with worry, the shoemaker hardly slept that night. At dawn, he had only a cup of hot water and a crust of bread for breakfast, because that's all there was. The poor shoemaker trudged off to his shop with his head down and his shoulders sagging. But as he entered and approached his workbench, he saw something surprising. In place of the pieces of leather was a beautiful pair of gentlemen's shoes, more beautiful than any pair that he'd ever seen. The stitches were neat, and even the silver buckle sparkled in the morning sun. The heel looked strong and refined. Who could have made such excellent shoes, he wondered. The shoemaker then went and displayed them proudly in the shop window. Well, before long, a well-dressed city fellow came into the shop. "What a fine pair of shoes!" he exclaimed. "I must have them. Here, take these gold coins. It's all the money I have right now, but I'll bring you some more tomorrow if that's not enough." "I assure you, sir," said the shoemaker, "it's more than enough. It's 10 times what I normally charge for my shoes." "No, this is a bargain. I must tell my friends about you," said the gentleman, and then he left happily. Immediately, the shoemaker went out to buy more leather and thread, and carefully he cut out enough for 6 pairs of shoes, and he lined them all up on the workbench. And on his way home, he stopped at the market to buy food for a feast: roast duckling, honeyed ham, crisp apples and dried currants, sweet breads and butter and savoury pies and thick cream. Oh, it was a happy day for him and his family. The next morning, when the shoemaker returned to work, he found 6 pairs of exquisitely made shoes, all sitting on the workbench. The gentleman's shoes looked hardy and handsome, while the lady's slippers were pretty and precious, with all little flowers decorating them. Almost as soon as the cobbler placed his shoes in the window, people from the city came to buy them at prices too high to believe. That night, he and his family feasted again. It was another happy day. And so this went on for many days, until the shoemaker had such a reputation that people came from far and wide to buy his beautiful shoes. However, as much as the shoemaker enjoyed his newfound wealth and fame, he often wondered who had bestowed such blessings on him. "Don't ask questions," his wife cautioned. "It's bad luck. You just be grateful." But curiosity got the better of him, and one night he crept back into his shop and he hid behind a screen. And not long after dark, two scruffy little elves, no bigger than the shoemaker's pinky finger, slipped through the window and climbed down the curtain and scurried onto the workbench. All night long, as the shoemaker watched, the little men did not speak a word, but busied themselves hammering and sewing and polishing and decorating all the shoes. And when the first rays of sun peeped through the windows, the elves slipped quietly away, leaving only their lovely handiwork as evidence that they had been there. The shoemaker's heart was touched. He wanted to do something for the two little men who had saved his family from certain starvation. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. That should be a holiday for the elves too, he said. And instead of cutting out pieces of leather for them to make into boots and slippers, the shoemaker went on crafting the tiniest pair of shoes for his barefooted little friends. Then he portioned out bits of the Christmas feast that his wife was preparing. Juicy baked turkey, sweet potatoes with pools of melted butter and brown sugar, golden kernels of corn and hot peach pie. And he set the workbench as a table with tiny little dishes from his daughter's tea set. And carefully he spooned the food into the tiny dishes. And next to each plate, he placed a pair of miniature shoes. And once again, he hid in his shop behind the screen and he waited for the elves' arrival. Soon after dark, he spied his pixie friends sliding down the curtain. And after they scurried up to the bench and saw their special little feast and squealed with delight all night long, instead of working, they ate and sang and danced in their new shoes. Then they disappeared. The elves knew that they'd been seen because the shoes fit them exactly. And from that day, they never came back to the shoemaker's shop because elves don't like to be seen by humans, or so it is said. But that didn't matter to the shoemaker. People from the city still came to buy his shoes, and they didn't even notice that they weren't quite as beautiful as they were before because, after all, he was a very good shoemaker. He still made the sturdy and sensible shoes too, which he gave to the poor people in his village. And the shoemaker and his family were never poor again, and they never ever forgot who saved them from starvation. And every year, on Christmas Eve, just after dark, they said a prayer of thanks for the kindness of those little elves. And that was a lovely story, wasn't it? So, and we've got an elf here as well who's enjoying that. So we'll see you tomorrow for another story. Bye.